Hello and welcome to the Johncast, the podcast for cool and smart kids. This is your oasis from homework, vegetables, and your parents. Welcome to the 13th episode of the Johncast. Sorry I was a little late this week. I was at a marketing conference in Florida. You're a smart and cool kid, so you read books. But TV is a little bit educational too, right? As Groucho Marx used to say, I find TV very educational. Every time somebody turns it on, I go into the other room and read a good book. As my dad says, educational TV is an oxymoron, which means it just doesn't make sense, like sugar-free chocolate. So, today we have a real-life author on the Johncast. Her name is Suki Westling, and I am excited to have her on the Johncast today. Hi, Suki. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to talk to you.
Okay. I enjoyed your book, Hannah Homeschooler.
Thank you.
As you may know, I've never been to school myself, so I'm also homeschooled, but we don't always use that term. About the book, which my sister and I very much enjoyed, could you briefly tell us the storyline and then how you came up with the idea for it?
Sure. So in the book starts with Hannah sitting in the window seat of her grandmother's living room looking out at the street across to her neighbors' houses, and she's seeing her two neighbors who live across the street getting in cars and going to school for the first day of school, but she's not going to school. And the reason is that she's homeschooled. She has just moved to her parents and her mother and brother, and she have just moved to live with her grandmother. And it's a whole new place, and the only two kids she knows so far are these two girls across the street who both go to school. And so for the first time in her homeschooling life, she feels different. And so she feels like she doesn't have a friend, and she feels like these kids think it's weird that she's a homeschooler. And so the book is about how Hannah comes to make friends and feel more comfortable being a homeschooler in her new location.
So how did you come up with the idea for it?
Well, I actually remember exactly how I came up with the idea, which is that my daughter she was my first homeschooler. I started homeschooling her when she was in kindergarten because school did not agree with her. There were certain things, some difficulties she had at school, and so I didn't know anything about homeschooling, but we started doing it, and it was really fun and great, and we loved it. And she got into reading every single one of the chapter book series that they had at our library. In our local library, in the children's section, they have a shelf where they shelve all of the chapter book series together. And so she was working her way through the whole shelf. And one day we were in the library and she was standing there and she said, "Why are all chapter book series about school?" And I thought, she's right. These books are all about school, and it's not just like they're about school, but they're about only school stuff, and kids who are homeschooled, none of this makes any particular sense to them. So I decided right then and there I was going to write a book about homeschoolers.
Ah. So how long did it take you to write it?
The first draft of it. So the writing process can be very interesting. The first draft for me often goes pretty quickly. I got the idea. And usually what happens for me is I get the idea, then I write some, then I think, and I let it go for a while, and then if it inspires me, I'll go back to it, and I can write first draft pretty quickly. So maybe, I don't know, a month or two. But then I sort of let it percolate, and in this case, I had an agent at the time. I sent it to her, and she said, "I really like the book, but no publisher is going to publish a book about homeschoolers." So I sort of, writers say I put it in a drawer, though these days what we do is we just leave it on our computer somewhere. And I ignored it for a couple of years, and then it just kept on bugging me that I wanted to put this book out there for my daughter. And not only that, my daughter kept bugging me, and she's not even the age to read chapter books anymore, but she kept saying, "When are you going to publish Hannah Homeschooler?" So finally I decided to do it, and then I sent it to a bunch of people to read to their kids to give me comments, because I really wanted kids' feedback. And so I got that, and then I rewrote it, and then I published it.
Ah, so did you write the old-fashioned way with pencil and paper, or on a computer?
I always write on a computer, and here's what I say. I say write in the way that makes the words flow the easiest. So some people write best with whatever writing tool, pencil or pen or whatever, and paper, and those people should keep doing that. And some people write best typing on a typewriter, and those people should keep doing that. And some people, like me, write best if I'm at a computer keyboard, so that's my tool of choice.
Did you get stuck at any point, and how did you handle it?
I always get stuck at different points when I'm writing, so I do a lot of writing because I also write journalism. I write articles for magazines. And in that case, you have to learn how to get unstuck because you have to write the article because your editor has given you a date and says, I need this by that date. And you can't just not turn it in. So in that case, what I do is I have two ways of doing it. One is I will just leave something for a while if I'm not enjoying writing it. I'll just walk away from it and do something else. And in my case, that might be gardening. It might be going for a walk in the woods. It might be cleaning the kitchen or taking my kids somewhere. I don't know. But I go away from it. And don't always try to just sit there and bang on it because that can really make you feel bad. And then sometimes, most of the time when I go back, I can just go back and start again. But sometimes I still am not feeling good about it. And then what I often do is I'll delete the last sentence or the last paragraph that I wrote because I feel like I put a roadblock in there somehow. So I'll delete it and I'll start back a little bit. And then I find that I can get going again.
Are you planning on writing a sequel?
I am hoping to. I set aside this summer so that I'm not going to be working on teaching and other writing projects, so I'm hoping to write a sequel.
What would be your advice to a young and aspiring writer like myself?
Well, the first thing that's really important is to write, and write a lot, because the more you write, the better your writing gets. Even if you don't even show it to anyone else, your writing will get better just by you doing lots of it. And the second thing is read, because the more good writing you read, the more your brain starts to just understand without even thinking about it what a good story is and how good writing is. And then the third thing is to share your writing with other people. So join a writing group or find a friend who wants to read your writing or read it out loud to your siblings or whatever you need to do to share it with somebody else.
Tell me about your family. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I have two kids, and they're 13 and 17 now, so one of them is applying to college in the fall, which is amazing. And my daughter, who's younger, who's 13, she was my first homeschooler, and she homeschooled kindergarten through 5th grade. Then she decided to spend a couple years in school, and now she's back in homeschooling. My son was in school when I started homeschooling my daughter, so he started homeschooling in 6th grade, and he would never go back to school. He loves homeschooling.
Do you force your kids to eat vile weeds, vegetables?
You know, both of my kids actually like vegetables, though our family has certain rules. One is you have to try everything, okay? The second is if you really dislike something, we are all allowed to dislike something. Because I, for example, will not eat anything made with goat's milk. I will not. And I am sorry, but I'm not going to eat it. And I'm not going to force my kid to eat something if they really hate it. But they can't hate everything. They have to have some vegetables that they'll eat, some whole grains that they'll eat, some fruits that they'll eat, and some proteins that they'll eat. And then, you know, they can't dislike everything.
Okay. Let's talk about homeschooling a little bit. How was your personal school experience as a child? And how did that factor into your decision to homeschool your kids?
It's interesting. I always thought that I was fine with school. And when I started homeschooling my daughter, it was, you know, I was a reluctant homeschooler because it wasn't something I decided to do on my own. It was because of trouble that we were having with school. And so it wasn't until after I started homeschooling that I started thinking about my own school experiences and realizing that I actually would have been probably happier as a homeschooler. And in fact, when I was in high school, I was very unhappy. And I ended up dropping out of high school and going to college early, which was very unusual at that time. But now that's something that homeschoolers do. So I sort of call myself a homeschooler, even though I didn't know what homeschooling was when I did that.
And finally, what is the best advice you could give to all the smart and cool kids that listen to the Johncast who want to maybe not even be an author but be successful in life?
Well, I think you should always remember that the word success has a much bigger meaning than you might think it has. A lot of kids, you'll watch TV shows or YouTube shows or whatever, and there's this definition of success that has to do with money and fame. But being successful means being happy with what you're doing, being inspired, feeling like you're doing good things for other people and for your family. And so that's a much bigger definition of success that I think that kids should focus on. So when it comes to writing specifically, I like to encourage kids to enjoy their writing and share it with other people, but not focus on getting published and making money, because that will make it so that the process isn't as enjoyable. And it's just not as important when you're a kid as being happy and learning and growing and being inspired.
Thank you for that awesome answer. Thank you for being on the Johncast, and I really look forward to the next book in the Hannah Homeschooler series. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk to you.
That was a very exciting interview. Now, I may have mentioned that I was at a marketing conference. Marketing is basically selling stuff to people. Or somebody else describes us in a more vulgar way.
Because I can't answer the first question. Oh, what do you do? Hell if I know. And if I explained it to you, A, you'd be bored, B, you wouldn't understand it, and C, you'd hate it. Let's see, I sit around and I dream up psychologically manipulative ways to sell nobody needs to them at prices much higher than they should pay. I get up every morning and I put on a Johnny Depp pirate costume and I scheme how to separate people from their money. That's one of the things I do. Now, it's a much longer answer. There's like another 8 things. Do you want to hear the other 8? No, I don't think so.
Yep, that's pretty much what a marketer is. Well, guys, that's all. Thanks for listening to the Johncast. Remember, the green fruit counts as a vegetable. Rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. And see you next Monday.